What would you do if the person you trusted most, the one person who should have had your back, suddenly turned the spotlight on you, exposing every secret, every ambition, every carefully hidden move you had made? Imagine sitting in your mansion, dressed for yet another high-profile appearance, confident that your public image is flawless, only to realize that the person who knows you best is about to destroy everything. That person is your mother, and that mother is Doria Ragland. For Meghan Markle, the storm wasn't coming. It had already arrived, and she had no idea just how devastating it would be. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. For years, Meghan Markle was the picture of calculated success. She had Hollywood charm, media savvy, and a royal marriage that seemed to place her directly at the center of the world's attention. Every smile, every wave, every public gesture had been carefully curated, orchestrated, and polished until it gleamed. People admired her. They envied her. They wondered how someone could rise so quickly, so seamlessly, from a television actress to the Duchess of Sussex. But what if none of it was accidental? What if every step had been plotted like moves on a chessboard, and everyone else, from her friends to the royal family to the media, were merely pawns in a game she controlled? The story you are about to hear isn't just another royal scandal. It's a revelation that changes everything we thought we knew about Meghan Markle. It's a story of ambition, secrecy, and a mother who knew too much, and finally decided that the world needed to know. Doria Ragland, Meghan's mother, stepped into the spotlight with calm determination, prepared to unveil truths her daughter hoped would never be spoken aloud. The words she spoke would shake Meghan to her core and send shockwaves through royal circles, Hollywood elites, and anyone who had believed in the carefully crafted image of the Duchess. Now, you may be wondering, why would a mother do such a thing? Why reveal secrets on air, publicly, with no hesitation? The answer lies in the subtle tension that had been simmering for years, hidden behind smiles, public appearances, and scripted interviews. Doria had watched her daughter navigate ambition after ambition, noting each calculated decision, every orchestrated encounter, and every meticulously planned phase of her life. And while Meghan had always believed she was untouchable, Doria knew otherwise. She knew the cracks beneath the surface, the inconsistencies, the actions that didn't align with the image Meghan projected to the world. This story matters now more than ever because the revelations have consequences, both personal and public. Social media exploded the moment Doria spoke, but the ramifications go deeper than tweets and headlines. Relationships within the royal family have been strained. Hollywood insiders are re-evaluating their alliances, and Meghan herself is forced to confront a truth she had long avoided. No matter how much you plan, how carefully you calculate, or how polished your exterior may appear, some truths cannot stay buried forever. The first shock came within minutes of Doria's interview going live. Meghan had been attending a high-profile charity gala, radiant in her designer gown, waving to photographers, projecting confidence. But behind the scenes, there was unease. A subtle tension in the air, a phone buzzing repeatedly, and messages that hinted at an impending revelation. Meghan had no idea that her mother was about to step onto a stage, not literally, but metaphorically, and deliver the kind of explosive commentary that would leave even the most seasoned public relations teams scrambling. Doria's words were measured, calm, and strikingly deliberate. She didn't scream, she didn't cry, she didn't rage. Instead, she painted a picture, piece by piece, of a woman whose life had been meticulously orchestrated. She planned her future in phases, Doria said, and those 7 words were like a key unlocking a door to a hidden narrative. Nothing ever happened by accident, she added, and suddenly, the media, the public, and even Meghan herself realized that the Duchess's entire life, from Hollywood to Kensington Palace, may have been a series of calculated steps toward personal gain, image control, and strategic alliances. Imagine, for a moment, the internal chaos that Meghan must have felt, the careful composure she had relied on for years. The practiced smiles, the confident waves, the public persona she had honed over decades, suddenly felt fragile, almost brittle. It's one thing to face criticism from strangers or journalists. It's another entirely to hear your mother, the one person who knows you better than anyone, publicly confirmed suspicions that had previously been whispered behind closed doors. Doria's revelations were not just facts. They were a mirror held up to Meghan's life, reflecting choices, motives, and behaviors that had been carefully concealed. And yet, there was more than scandal here. There was a deeper, emotional tension, the kind that comes from betrayal layered with love, resentment mingled with concern, and the complicated dance between parent and child who share history, memory, and secrets. Doria's interview wasn't just about exposing ambition. It was about revealing patterns, decisions, and behaviors that had long-term consequences for everyone around Meghan, from family members to friends, colleagues, and the public. But what exactly did Doria reveal? And why did she choose this moment, live on air, in front of millions, to unveil what had been hidden for so long? The answers are shocking, layered, and, frankly, unexpected. She didn't simply recount past events. She detailed the architecture of ambition, the blueprint of a life carefully constructed with phases, milestones, and contingencies. Every career move, every high-profile connection, every public gesture that the world assumed was spontaneous or authentic was framed as part of a larger, calculated plan. And here is where it gets truly fascinating. Many believed Meghan had entered the royal family by chance, a meeting at a charity event, a fortuitous introduction, a natural romance. But Doria's revelations suggest otherwise. Every interaction, every photo op, every carefully orchestrated encounter may have been premeditated, executed with precision, and designed to position Meghan in the perfect place at the perfect time. The meticulousness is almost admirable, if it weren't for the ethical and personal implications that come with such manipulation. At this point, you may be asking yourself, how much of Meghan's public persona was genuine, and how much was calculated? How much of the charming, compassionate, poised woman the world admired was a mask designed for influence, status, and power? These are not trivial questions. They cut to the heart of identity, trust, and authenticity, themes that resonate not just in royal circles, but in every life where ambition collides with personal relationships. And the tension doesn't stop there. Doria's revelations are punctuated with moments that are emotionally wrenching. She describes private interactions that hint at control, secrecy, and manipulation. Anecdotes about career decisions, personal relationships, and strategic public appearances paint a picture of a daughter whose life was driven by a mix of ambition, necessity, and a relentless desire to shape the narrative around her. It's compelling, disturbing, and impossible to ignore. From the audience's perspective, the stakes couldn't be higher. Every revelation invites further scrutiny, questioning, and debate. Social media feeds flooded with reactions, pundits weighed in, and the world watched as the narrative shifted in real time. But for Meghan, the experience was profoundly personal. It was one thing to handle public criticism, and quite another to confront the mother who knows you intimately, revealing truths that cannot be unspoken. As we begin to unpack this story, ask yourself, how do you manage ambition, loyalty, and public perception when the two collide? How do you navigate life when the person who raised you suddenly becomes the messenger of truth? And most importantly, how do you recover when the carefully constructed image you have spent years building starts to crumble before your eyes? These are questions Meghan Markle is now forced to confront, questions that millions of viewers around the world are watching unfold. But this is only the beginning. The real shock comes in the moments after the interview airs. Meghan's reaction, the media frenzy, the family confrontations, all of it sets the stage for a drama that is as intricate as it is explosive. The tension between mother and daughter is far from resolved, and as we will see, the consequences of these revelations ripple through every aspect of Meghan's life. And just as Meghan believed she had navigated the pitfalls of fame, influence, and royalty, Doria's interview changed everything. The meticulous plans, the public appearances, the aura of control, all were suddenly cast in a new, revealing light. As the story unfolds, we will see how ambition, secrecy, and family dynamics collide, leaving Meghan to face a reckoning that she could never have anticipated. No one knew the storm was coming, least of all Meghan Markle. On the surface, she was the picture of perfection, flawless makeup, carefully chosen designer outfits, and that unmistakable confident air that had captivated millions. People watched her every move, applauded her every gesture, and believed, without question, that she had life completely under control. But behind that polished exterior, cracks had been forming for years. Subtle, almost imperceptible at first, like tiny hairline fractures in the glass of a chandelier. Imagine waking up one morning, thinking everything is fine, only to realize that the very foundation you had built your life on was unstable. That was Meghan. She had mastered the art of control. Her days were choreographed like a ballet. Meetings, media appearances, photo ops, public speeches, and private engagements, all timed to perfection. Everything was planned. Every move, every encounter, every smile was intentional. And yet, she didn't see the one move that was about to blindside her. The calm before the storm was deceptive. Meghan had been operating under the assumption that she knew every angle, that every ally was loyal, and that her image, the global image of a modern duchess, poised, compassionate, and clever, was untouchable. The media loved her. Hollywood loved her. Even some members of the royal family, who had been skeptical at first, were beginning to warm to her charm and intelligence. She had a plan, and she executed it flawlessly, or so she thought. Meanwhile, her mother, Doria Ragland, had been quietly observing. Outwardly, she was supportive, a doting parent in the eyes of the public. But beneath that calm exterior, she had seen everything. The calculated moves, the ambitious choices, the carefully crafted persona. Doria had lived with Meghan long enough to recognize patterns that no outsider could possibly perceive. She knew the timing of each chance encounter, the deliberate placement of photographs in tabloids, the strategic alignment with influential people. Doria knew that Meghan's life was a sequence of phases, and nothing had been accidental. And then, just before the storm broke, Meghan had one of her typical mornings. She woke up in her luxury residence, surrounded by the trappings of fame, custom furniture, rare artwork, and a panoramic view of the city below. She sipped her morning coffee, scrolling through the usual social media feeds, reading flattering headlines, and ignoring the occasional criticism that floated beneath the surface. She was confident. She was untouchable. She believed that she had mastered her world. But there was a subtle unease in the air that morning, almost imperceptible, like a low hum that something was off. A text from an aide had arrived, brief and vague, but hinting at a conversation she might need to prepare for. Another notification pinged on her phone, a reminder about a televised charity gala later that evening. Nothing alarming, just routine, but in hindsight, these were the first signs that the calm would not last. Across town, Doria Ragland was preparing herself for a different kind of performance. Unlike her daughter, she wasn't concerned with cameras, fashion, or public perception. Her stage was honesty. Her tool was truth. And she was ready to deliver a narrative that would shake Meghan's carefully constructed world. Doria knew that what she was about to reveal would not just embarrass Meghan, it would alter public perception, strain familial relationships, and potentially redefine Meghan's legacy. What was Doria's motivation? Love? Revenge? A mix of both? Perhaps it was a maternal duty, a sense that someone needed to speak, to reveal truths that had long been hidden. Maybe it was frustration at years of witnessing ambition unfold without accountability. Whatever the reason, Doria's decision to go public was deliberate, calculated, and inevitable. Meghan, oblivious to the impending storm, arrived at her gala that evening, radiant and poised. Cameras flashed as she entered, capturing every step, every twirl of her gown, every practiced smile. Social media buzzed with admiration. She was on top of the world, untouchable, untarnished, a queen in her own right. But while the audience clapped and photographers snapped away, the first tremors of the storm had already begun. Minutes later, a segment on a popular network began, one that would forever alter the trajectory of Meghan's life. Doria appeared on screen, calm, collected, almost serene. No dramatic gestures, no shouting, no tears. Just a woman who knew the truth and was ready to share it. The moment Meghan would hear her mother's words, either live or through the ripple effect of media coverage, was the moment the calm ended. Doria's first revelation was subtle but striking. She described Meghan's life as a series of calculated phases. She planned her future in phases, she said. Pause. Those words alone were like a strike of lightning. The audience gasped, the media leaned forward, and Meghan, wherever she was, had no idea that the storm had already landed. Nothing ever happened by accident. Doria continued, layering clarity over suspicion. Every career decision, every media appearance, every encounter that seemed coincidental now had a new meaning. Deliberate, premeditated, strategic. The implications were staggering. The Duchess of Sussex, the world's admired figure of grace and ambition, had been operating not just with ambition, but with meticulous calculation. Each step forward, each seemingly spontaneous act, had been part of a grand plan. And the woman revealing it, the one person Meghan had always trusted implicitly, had just taken control of the narrative. Imagine the internal panic Meghan must have felt. She was known for her composure, her confidence, her ability to manage high-pressure situations. Yet nothing could prepare her for this. Not the flashing cameras, not the media speculation, not even the royal expectations. This was personal. This was intimate. This was a mother confronting a daughter in a way that no PR team could spin, no public statement could counter. From a storytelling perspective, this is the moment where tension escalates. The calm that Meghan had relied on for years, the control, the precision, the curated image, evaporates instantly. Everything she believed about her security, her influence, her untouchable status, is challenged in real time. The storm is no longer coming. It is here. And Meghan is at the eye of it, unprepared, vulnerable, and exposed. Doria continued, providing anecdotal details that further punctuated the narrative. She spoke of career moves that were strategically timed, of relationships cultivated for influence, of gestures designed to manipulate perception. The subtlety of these revelations is what made them so powerful. It wasn't slander or out-of-context claims. It was a careful, deliberate account of a life engineered with precision. And as the audience absorbed each detail, the narrative shifted. Meghan's image was no longer untouchable. Her story was no longer controlled by her alone. The media frenzy began almost immediately. Social media feeds exploded with reactions ranging from shock to skepticism. Journalists scrambled for commentary. Pundits analyzed every word, dissected every implication, and speculated on the consequences. Yet the true shock was not in the headlines. It was in Meghan's realization that her life, so carefully constructed, had been exposed in a way she could neither prevent nor control. And yet, within the chaos, there was a strange clarity. Doria's revelations were not random or vengeful. They were precise, targeted, and meaningful. Every fact she disclosed, every observation she made, painted a picture of a daughter whose life was guided by a plan, and whose plan was now visible to the world. The storm was violent, but it was also illuminating. By the end of the evening, Meghan's world had shifted irreversibly. Her confidence was shaken. Her plans were exposed. Her relationship with her mother had reached a critical turning point. And the public, the media, and the royal family were left to process a narrative far more complex than anyone had anticipated. But as the first wave of shock subsided, a deeper question emerged. How would Meghan respond? Would she fight back? Retreat? Attempt damage control? The answers were not immediately clear. The calm she had relied on for years was gone. And the storm, relentless and unforgiving, was only beginning. Why would a mother decide to go public with the most intimate details of her daughter's life? Why, after years of support, patience, and quiet observation, would Doria Ragland step onto the public stage and expose Meghan Markle in a way that could never be undone? These are the questions that buzzed in the minds of millions the moment Doria appeared on air. But the answers, as we'll see, were rooted in a mix of timing, strategy, and a personal moral compass that refused to stay silent any longer. Doria's move was unexpected, yes, but it was not impulsive. Behind the calm demeanor and composed voice seen on television was a woman who had carefully chosen the moment, the platform, and the words that would maximize impact. She wasn't angry. She wasn't seeking revenge. She was deliberate, calculated, and aware of exactly what she wanted to achieve, a revelation that would alter public perception and force a reckoning. Weeks before the interview, Doria had been observing her daughter from a distance, piecing together the evidence of a life meticulously planned and executed. She had seen the patterns, the phases, the timing of every encounter and decision. She had noticed the way Meghan navigated her relationships, manipulated media attention, and positioned herself for every opportunity, from Hollywood to royalty. And she realized something profound. The world needed to know the truth. But the question remained, why now? Why choose a live platform to air these revelations? The answer lies in the intersection of opportunity and timing. Meghan's public persona was at a peak. Adored by fans, admired by some members of the royal family, and celebrated by Hollywood insiders. By choosing this moment, Doria ensured that the impact would be maximal. The audience would not only listen, they would feel the weight of the revelations against the backdrop of Meghan's perceived perfection. On the day of the broadcast, Doria arrived at the studio, unassuming in appearance but focused in demeanor. She wore neutral tones, no flamboyant accessories, nothing to distract from the message she was about to deliver. Every movement was measured, every gesture purposeful. Unlike Meghan, she was not performing for cameras. She was performing for truth. The distinction was subtle but crucial, and the audience could sense it immediately. As the cameras began rolling, Doria opened with a calm, controlled tone. She did not attack her daughter. She did not sensationalize. Instead, she framed her words with precision, providing context, clarity, and insight into a life that had been meticulously orchestrated. She planned her future in phases, Doria said. Pause. The words resonated, carrying the weight of observation, understanding, and undeniable truth. Nothing ever happened by accident, she added, a phrase that would echo across social media, headlines, and conversations worldwide. For Meghan, the broadcast was an unseen ambush. She was unaware that her mother had decided to go public at this exact moment, unaware that the world was about to learn the patterns, strategies, and calculations that had governed her life. She had assumed that her image was untouchable, that her carefully curated persona was immune to exposure. And yet, in a single broadcast, Doria dismantled that perception with calm precision. The first revelation focused on Meghan's career in Hollywood. Doria outlined how Meghan had meticulously chosen roles, cultivated relationships with producers, and navigated the industry with a level of strategic planning few could comprehend. What appeared to be luck, coincidence, or serendipity was in fact the result of careful planning, timing, and the calculated building of influence. Doria spoke of her daughter's public gestures, appearances, interviews, philanthropic events, and revealed the underlying strategy behind them. Each act, each smile, each speech had been designed to position Meghan for maximum visibility and social advantage. Nothing was spontaneous. Nothing was accidental. Every public moment was a phase in a plan that aimed for power, recognition, and influence. As the interview progressed, Doria moved to the more personal aspects of Meghan's life. She described the careful orchestration of relationships, the cultivation of alliances, and even the timing of personal revelations in a way that aligned with career and social objectives. It was a blueprint of ambition laid bare, exposing the intricate architecture of a life many had admired without understanding its calculated foundations. The audience, both in the studio and watching from home, was captivated. The shock value was undeniable. Here was a woman who had lived with Meghan, observed her intimately, and was now revealing patterns and decisions that had previously been hidden. Social media erupted almost instantly, with reactions ranging from disbelief to outrage, from curiosity to admiration for Doria's courage. But Doria's move was not just about revelation. It was about control. By choosing the platform, the timing, and the narrative, she positioned herself as the one who held the truth. She controlled the framing, the pacing, and the emphasis, ensuring that Meghan's life would now be viewed through the lens she had created. It was a masterstroke of timing and strategy, one that underscored Doria's own understanding of influence and public perception. Meanwhile, back in Meghan's world, the consequences began to ripple. Her carefully managed public image started to crack under the scrutiny of her mother's revelations. Publicists scrambled to formulate a response. Close friends and allies debated strategy, unsure of how to navigate the sudden exposure. And Meghan herself was forced to confront a reality she had long avoided, that her life, her choices, and her carefully constructed persona were now being examined in a way she could not control. Doria's unexpected move also highlighted the complexities of mother-daughter dynamics. On one hand, there was the element of betrayal, the pain of having private truths exposed without consent. On the other, there was the element of love and responsibility, a mother believing that honesty, even when painful, was necessary. This duality added depth to the story, making it not just a scandal, but a profound exploration of trust, loyalty, and the sometimes harsh realities of family relationships. As the broadcast continued, Doria layered her revelations, moving from the professional to the personal, from calculated ambitions to intimate behaviors. She revealed how Meghan had leveraged opportunities, navigated challenges, and positioned herself for influence in ways that seemed effortless to the outside world but were, in fact, the product of careful planning. Audience engagement peaked as Doria delivered anecdotes that were both surprising and revealing. Small details, a strategic meeting here, a well-timed media appearance there, were presented not as coincidence but as deliberate moves in a larger strategy. Viewers were left to reconsider everything they had believed about Meghan, her charm, her poise, her seemingly natural rise to prominence. Every assumption was challenged. Every perception was questioned. And then came the emotional pivot. Doria revealed moments that highlighted the personal costs of Meghan's calculated life. Relationships strained, trust tested, and intimacy compromised by ambition. These revelations were not just factual. They carried an emotional weight that resonated with anyone who had ever navigated ambition, strategy, and personal relationships. It was a reminder that behind every public image lies a complex, often hidden, personal reality. For Meghan, the broadcast was a turning point. Every carefully executed plan, every public gesture, every phase of her life was now under scrutiny. The calm she had relied upon for years, the composure, the control, the image, was gone. And while the media frenzy and social media storm amplified the impact, the personal confrontation was even more profound. She was forced to confront not only public perception but the intimate truth revealed by the one person she had always trusted implicitly, her mother. By the end of the interview, the stage was set for a series of consequences that would ripple through Meghan's life. Relationships, public perception, and her own self-image were now in flux. Doria's unexpected move had not only revealed hidden truths, but had fundamentally altered the trajectory of Meghan's narrative. And as the broadcast concluded, the question remained, how would Meghan respond? Would she attempt to reclaim control? Would she retreat, regroup, or confront the revelations head-on? The answers were not immediately clear, and the uncertainty only heightened the tension. The calm had ended, and the storm had begun, relentless, unforgiving, and impossible to ignore. Everything Meghan Markle had tried to keep hidden, the story she told herself, the choices she justified, the secrets she thought no one could expose, suddenly came crashing into the light. It started subtly, like a shadow creeping along the walls, until the spotlight hit her life directly, revealing facets she had assumed would remain private forever. And the one delivering this illumination was her mother, Doria Ragland, a woman whose calm demeanor masked an unshakable resolve. Imagine sitting in your home, confident that your public image is untouchable, only to realize that the person who knew you best is about to dismantle it, piece by piece, in front of millions. This was Meghan's reality. Doria, in her poised and measured way, began peeling back layers of a life meticulously curated for the public eye. What the world had seen as spontaneity, authenticity, and grace was, in truth, a series of deliberate, calculated moves. And with every revelation, the story of Meghan Markle as the untouchable Duchess began to unravel. The first layer of revelation centered on Meghan's early life, a phase that most observers had assumed to be ordinary. But Doria painted a different picture, one of ambition, foresight, and early strategic thinking. According to Doria, Meghan's childhood and young adulthood were marked by a subtle yet relentless focus on positioning herself for influence. Each opportunity she seized, each friendship she cultivated, and each career move she made was part of a broader plan. Nothing happened by chance. Every connection, every achievement, was intentional, aimed at creating a path that would ultimately lead to Hollywood and, later, royalty. What shocked the public was not merely that Meghan had ambition. Ambition is expected in anyone striving for success, but the extent to which she calculated every move. Doria revealed that Meghan had identified influential individuals, anticipated career milestones, and even manipulated public perception long before she became a household name. It was a blueprint of a life designed with precision, executed with care, and often hidden beneath the veneer of charisma and charm. The revelations did not stop at professional ambition. Doria exposed personal behaviors that spoke to the meticulousness of Meghan's life planning. She described moments of manipulation, calculated interactions, and even minor decisions that had larger consequences. Every social encounter, from Hollywood parties to networking events, had been used to position Meghan for visibility and influence. To the world, these were mere social appearances. To those who knew her best, these were deliberate strategies, executed like moves in a grand chess game. And then came the more intimate revelations, the ones that truly stunned audiences. Doria spoke of private relationships, personal alliances, and moments that seemed innocuous but, under scrutiny, revealed a careful orchestration of interactions. Friendships were chosen for strategic value. Romantic relationships were timed and positioned to advance social standing. Even charitable engagements were evaluated for impact on public perception. Nothing was left to chance. Every action had intent, and every phase of Meghan's life was part of a calculated progression toward power, visibility, and influence. What made Doria's revelations particularly striking was the precision with which she presented them. She did not speak in vague generalities. She provided specific examples, illustrating patterns that had previously been invisible to the public. She highlighted timelines, sequences of events, and relationships that, when viewed together, revealed a life orchestrated with remarkable intent. It was compelling because it confirmed what many had suspected but could never prove. Meghan Markle's rise to fame and influence was not a series of fortunate accidents. It was the result of deliberate, strategic planning. This narrative raised fundamental questions about perception, authenticity, and ambition. Was the Meghan Markle the public adored, the compassionate, charming, poised Duchess, the real her? Or was it a carefully constructed persona, designed to maximize influence and minimize risk? Doria's revelations forced the public to confront this dichotomy, highlighting the contrast between image and reality, perception and truth. The distinction was both fascinating and unsettling, offering insight into the complex interplay between personal ambition and public scrutiny. The emotional impact of these revelations on Meghan herself cannot be overstated. She had relied on the illusion of control for years, believing that her narrative was her own to shape. But as Doria's words aired, it became evident that the narrative was now shared and controlled, at least partially, by her mother. The tension between personal ambition and familial loyalty had never been more pronounced. Meghan, for all her planning and foresight, had underestimated the one person who knew her best, her mother. Audience engagement skyrocketed as Doria continued to unveil details of Meghan's past. Viewers learned about decisions that were not simply mistakes or accidents, but deliberate maneuvers designed to position her advantageously in every context, social, professional, and personal. Every revelation added depth to the story, revealing a woman whose life was guided by foresight, planning, and a relentless drive to succeed. And with each disclosure, the audience's curiosity intensified. What else had been orchestrated? What other truths had remained hidden behind Meghan's polished exterior? Among the most compelling aspects of Doria's revelations were the contradictions they highlighted. Meghan, widely celebrated for her authenticity and charm, had presented an image that masked a life of calculation and strategy. This dissonance fascinated the public. How could someone who appeared so spontaneous and relatable have operated with such precision and intent? It was a puzzle that challenged assumptions, prompting viewers to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the Duchess. Doria's storytelling was also emotionally resonant. She described the personal costs of Meghan's meticulous planning, strained friendships, moments of isolation, and the subtle emotional toll of maintaining a persona that demanded constant attention and control. These insights humanize the narrative, showing that even the most calculated lives carry vulnerabilities and consequences. Ambition, strategy, and influence come at a price, and Doria did not shy away from highlighting that reality. The revelations also prompted broader reflection. How does one balance ambition with authenticity? How do personal relationships survive when life is lived according to a strict blueprint of advancement? Doria's insights forced viewers to grapple with these questions, making the story not just about Meghan Markle, but about universal themes of ambition, family, and the pursuit of influence. As the broadcast unfolded, the tension escalated. The public's fascination grew, social media erupted, and journalists scrambled to interpret every word. Yet the most profound impact was on Meghan herself. The calm she had relied upon, the careful construction of her life's narrative, was shattered. She faced a moment of reckoning, not with the media, not with strangers, but with the one person whose perspective mattered most, her mother. By the end of the segment, the stage was set for the next phase of the story. The public had been introduced to a version of Meghan Markle that was both familiar and startlingly new. Ambitious, calculated, and strategic in ways few had anticipated. And Meghan herself was forced to confront the consequences of these revelations, knowing that the life she had meticulously planned was now being scrutinized from every angle. But just as the first wave of shock began to settle, the question lingered. What would Meghan do next? Would she attempt to spin the narrative, retreat into private life, or confront her mother directly? The answers were unclear, and the uncertainty only heightened the drama. The past had been unveiled, and the stage was set for consequences that would ripple through every aspect of her life. She planned her future in phases, Doria Ragland had said, her voice calm, yet unwavering, like a bell tolling through the chaos of Meghan Markle's meticulously orchestrated world. Those words were more than a statement. They were a revelation. Every observer, every fan, every royal insider who had assumed Meghan's rise was organic now had to confront the possibility that her life had been carefully staged, calculated step by step. Nothing had happened by accident. Nothing. Every move had a purpose, and every encounter was aligned with an endgame that had been years in the making. Imagine for a moment the audacity of such a life. To plan with such precision that even the most intimate moments, personal relationships, and career choices are executed according to a long-term blueprint. It's impressive, yes, but also terrifying, both for those around her and for Meghan herself, who now had to contend with the exposure of a reality she had assumed only she understood. Doria's revelation wasn't just about ambition. It was about foresight, strategy, and the calculated architecture of an entire life. Phase 1, according to Doria, had begun long before Meghan was in the public eye. Even as a young adult navigating Los Angeles, she had already demonstrated a knack for positioning herself advantageously. Each friendship, each networking opportunity, and each small role in television and film was selected not simply for experience or enjoyment, but for visibility, influence, and potential future leverage. To an outsider, these moves might appear organic, even spontaneous. To Doria, they were part of a blueprint. Every phase had its own timeline, objectives, and measurable outcomes. Phase 2 involved high-profile career decisions. Doria described Meghan's selective approach to roles in Hollywood, her cultivated relationships with influential producers and directors, and her ability to leverage media attention. Appearances on talk shows, magazine spreads, and philanthropic events weren't random. They were strategically designed to increase her public profile, build credibility, and craft a persona that would make her irresistible to broader audiences. Each step was deliberate. Every choice had a calculated ripple effect, ensuring that she remained on track for her ultimate goals. The public, of course, had no idea. They saw Meghan as charming, charismatic, and authentic, a woman who rose through Hollywood on talent and determination alone. But Doria's revelations shattered that illusion. Behind every smile, behind every perfectly timed interview, behind every carefully posed photograph, was a strategy designed to position her in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. Every moment that seemed accidental was, in fact, the product of meticulous planning. Phase 3, as Doria explained, was the transition into the royal sphere. This was where Meghan's ambitions became most audacious and most scrutinized. According to Doria, Meghan had prepared herself for the royal stage with the same precision she had applied to her Hollywood career. She studied protocol, aligned herself with influential allies, and navigated public perception with surgical precision. Every interaction with the royal family, every public appearance, every media-friendly moment was executed with an understanding of optics, influence, and long-term positioning. What made this phase particularly shocking was how Doria framed Meghan's relationships within the royal circle. These weren't simply friendships or familial bonds. They were calculated moves, alliances forged to ensure access, influence, and a foothold in a world that was notoriously closed and hierarchical. Doria detailed interactions that, to outsiders, appeared cordial or spontaneous, but which in reality were carefully managed, timed, and aligned with broader objectives. It was a chessboard of power, and Meghan had thought she was playing flawlessly. Phase 4 involved public perception and media manipulation. Doria described how Meghan had mastered the art of crafting narratives, controlling images, and leveraging public sentiment to her advantage. Every charitable endeavor, every advocacy campaign, and every carefully timed announcement was part of a broader strategy designed to reinforce her persona as compassionate, forward-thinking, and socially aware. Yet beneath this polished exterior was a level of calculation that few had imagined. Even the most seemingly altruistic acts were executed with a deep understanding of optics and strategic advantage. Audience engagement surged as Doria outlined the intricacies of these phases. She didn't just state facts, she provided examples, timelines, and outcomes, painting a vivid picture of a life orchestrated with precision. The impact was immediate. Viewers began to question every gesture, every smile, every public move Meghan had made. Could anything truly have been spontaneous? Was every aspect of her public persona the result of careful calculation? And, most importantly, what would happen when the blueprint itself was exposed to the world? The personal dimensions of these phases were equally significant. Doria revealed that strategic planning had extended to Meghan's private life, including relationships, friendships, and even moments that should have been intimate. Romantic connections were timed, friendships cultivated or discarded based on potential utility, and public appearances aligned with broader social positioning. In Doria's words, nothing was random. Every phase of Meghan's life, professional, social, personal, was interconnected, feeding into a larger strategy that aimed to maximize influence and visibility. This level of orchestration, however, came with costs. Doria spoke candidly about the emotional toll, noting that maintaining such a life demanded constant vigilance, performance, and adaptation. Isolation, distrust, and the burden of managing perception were inevitable consequences. Meghan's ambitions, while impressive in scope, had also created vulnerabilities, particularly in relationships with those who expected authenticity and honesty. The more calculated the life, the more fragile the trust became, and the easier it was for Doria to expose it when the time was right. As the broadcast continued, viewers were struck not only by the precision of Meghan's planning, but also by the audacity of Doria's revelations. She had not only observed and documented, but had also chosen the perfect moment to disclose these truths. By framing Meghan's life in phases, Doria provided a lens through which every action, every relationship, and every public move could be analyzed. It was a revelation that transformed perception, forcing the public to reassess the entire narrative of Meghan Markle's rise. What made this revelation particularly compelling was its clarity and structure. Doria didn't rely on vague claims or sensationalist language. She presented a methodical account, illustrating patterns and sequences that were both undeniable and revealing. The strategic nature of Meghan's life became apparent not as conjecture, but as a logical, observable progression. Every phase had a purpose, every action a calculated result. It was an unprecedented glimpse into the mind of a woman who had carefully orchestrated her own ascent, and whose blueprint was now being exposed for all to see. By the end of this segment, the implications were staggering. Meghan's life, once perceived as a series of fortunate events and charismatic choices, was now understood as a meticulously designed sequence of strategic phases. Every admirer, every critic, every casual observer had to reconsider their assumptions. The Duchess of Sussex was not merely ambitious. She was a strategist, a planner, and, as Doria had revealed, a woman whose life had been constructed with extraordinary precision. But the true shock came in realizing that even with all this foresight, Meghan had not accounted for the one person who could disrupt the entire plan: her mother. Doria had seen the pattern, recognized the phases, and chosen the moment to expose them to the world. The careful orchestration that Meghan had relied upon for years had been rendered vulnerable, not by media scrutiny, not by public opinion, but by the intimate knowledge and timing of her own mother. And as the broadcast concluded, the audience was left with a powerful, lingering question. How would Meghan respond when confronted with the revelation that her life, so carefully planned, was now being analyzed, critiqued, and exposed? Would she fight back, attempt damage control, or retreat into private life? The calm precision of her phased plan had collided with the relentless scrutiny of public exposure, and the consequences were only beginning to unfold. It wasn't enough for Meghan Markle to conquer Hollywood. Fame, attention, and red carpet glamour were only stepping stones in a carefully plotted trajectory, one that ultimately led her to the royal family. For most, the idea of entering that world seems like an accident, a twist of fate, a fairy tale romance. But for Meghan, according to Doria Ragland's revelations, nothing was accidental. Every connection, every interaction, and every carefully timed encounter was part of a meticulous plan to secure her position within one of the most scrutinized and exclusive families in the world. Imagine the level of foresight required. To navigate a world as rigid and tradition-bound as the British monarchy demands not only social acumen, but also a deep understanding of optics, influence, and hierarchy. It is a world where missteps are magnified, where a single comment can ripple through tabloids, palace walls, and public opinion. Yet Meghan had approached it with the same precision she had applied to her Hollywood career. Every appearance, every smile, every seemingly spontaneous gesture had been calculated to maximize favor and minimize risk. Doria's revelations outlined a clear strategy. Meghan didn't merely stumble into the royal circle. She planned her approach in layers. The first layer was positioning herself within circles that intersected with royal interests. Charity events, galas, and high-profile philanthropic endeavors were not chosen randomly. Each event was selected for its potential to increase visibility among influential individuals and create opportunities for introductions. Connections were cultivated with intention, with the understanding that they could later facilitate introductions to those who mattered most. The second layer involved the careful crafting of relationships within the royal sphere. Meghan's interactions with aides, advisors, and public officials were guided by an awareness of their influence. Friendships were not just social, they were strategic. Every conversation, every gesture of goodwill, and every seemingly casual moment was evaluated for potential impact. Doria emphasized that Meghan had a remarkable ability to read people, assess their utility, and position herself advantageously without appearing manipulative, a skill that would prove invaluable in her rise to prominence. Perhaps the most audacious layer, according to Doria, was Meghan's courtship of Prince Harry. While the world witnessed a love story unfolding with fairy tale precision, behind the scenes, Doria revealed a pattern of deliberate planning. Meetings were orchestrated, appearances timed, and narratives controlled to present a seamless romance. The timing of public acknowledgement, media coverage, and social appearances was all aligned with broader objectives. Every phase of the courtship was executed to maximize visibility, influence, and favor within the royal family. The strategic nature of Meghan's moves extended to public perception management. She had cultivated a persona that blended charm, charisma, and relatability, an image carefully constructed to resonate with both the public and the media. Public appearances were designed not only to enhance personal image, but to solidify credibility and desirability in the eyes of those who could influence her trajectory. Every speech, interview, and charitable gesture was scrutinized, refined, and timed to perfection. It was a symphony of calculated gestures orchestrated to produce a precise outcome. Doria didn't shy away from highlighting the implications of these actions. The calculated approach had earned Meghan both admirers and critics, but it also introduced risk. Relationships were transactional in subtle ways. Trust was conditional. Loyalty was contingent upon perceived benefit. While Meghan's public persona radiated warmth and authenticity, the underlying narrative, as Doria revealed, was one of strategic maneuvering. The intersection of ambition and social navigation created tension, vulnerability, and potential exposure, all of which Doria knew how to leverage. The audience was riveted by these revelations. The idea that Meghan's courtship, public appearances, and charitable work had been orchestrated with such precision challenged everything the public had assumed about the Duchess. Viewers were forced to reconsider the natural charm, authenticity, and grace that had captivated millions. Was it genuine? Or was it carefully curated? And if it was curated, how much of the public persona was truly Meghan, and how much was performance designed to manipulate perception and secure advantage? Doria's revelations also shed light on Meghan's adaptability. The royal family, while steeped in tradition, is not immune to strategic influence. Meghan's awareness of this allowed her to navigate challenges with remarkable agility. She anticipated reactions, managed optics, and adjusted behavior to maintain favor and influence. Doria noted that this adaptability, while impressive, was also a double-edged sword. It allowed Meghan to achieve rapid ascension, but it also made her life more complex, requiring constant vigilance, calculation, and performance. A particularly striking aspect of Doria's account was how Meghan leveraged contrast to her advantage. She was presented as modern, relatable, and independent, traits that distinguished her from traditional royal expectations. At the same time, she demonstrated loyalty, charm, and decorum when required, blending innovation with tradition. This duality enhanced her appeal, positioning her as a bridge between the royal institution and contemporary audiences. Doria's revelations suggested that these choices were not intuitive. They were planned, timed, and executed with precision to produce specific outcomes. The media's role in this phase was also significant. Meghan understood the power of narrative, image, and attention. By cultivating favorable coverage, highlighting select achievements, and strategically engaging with the press, she controlled how the public perceived her. Doria described moments where Meghan used the media to amplify influence, deflect criticism, and reinforce her curated persona. These maneuvers were subtle yet effective, illustrating a sophisticated understanding of the interplay between public perception and social positioning. Family dynamics added another layer of complexity. Meghan's approach to royal relationships required sensitivity, awareness, and careful management of expectations. Doria emphasized that Meghan had navigated these dynamics with calculated grace, ensuring that alliances were cultivated while potential conflicts were mitigated. Every gesture, from attending family events to engaging in private conversations, was executed with awareness of potential consequences. It was a delicate dance, and one that required constant attention and precision. Yet despite all this planning, Doria's revelations highlighted vulnerabilities. Strategic maneuvering creates exposure, particularly when the plan is laid bare. By going public, Doria disrupted the carefully constructed narrative, exposing patterns, intentions, and calculated moves to scrutiny. The very skills that had facilitated Meghan's rise were now under examination, revealing both her brilliance and her susceptibility. The calm control she had relied upon was being challenged in real time, and the stakes could not have been higher. Audience engagement was heightened as the implications became clear. The intersection of ambition, strategy, and family dynamics created a narrative that was not only compelling but universally resonant. Viewers were invited to consider how ambition shapes behavior, how perception influences reality, and how exposure of private strategies can upend even the most calculated lives. Doria's revelations offered both insight and suspense, creating a tension that demanded attention, reflection, and curiosity about what would happen next. By the end of this chapter, the stage was set for the next revelation, the tension between Meghan's public image and private reality. While the phases had been executed with precision, the exposure of the blueprint introduced unpredictability. Relationships, reputation, and influence were now vulnerable. The narrative that Meghan had controlled was shifting, and the consequences of her calculated moves were beginning to ripple across every aspect of her life. But just as Meghan believed she had mastered every step, every interaction, every public perception, Doria's revelations reminded her, and the world, that even the most strategic lives are susceptible to exposure. And as the next phase unfolded, Meghan would face challenges that were impossible to plan for, consequences that were unavoidable, and revelations that would force her to confront a truth she could no longer control. What people see is rarely what exists beneath the surface. It's a simple truth, yet one that Meghan Markle's life illustrates with unparalleled intensity. For years, the world believed they knew her. The charming, compassionate, poised Duchess who navigated Hollywood and royalty with grace. But Doria Ragland's revelations peeled back the carefully constructed layers, exposing a dichotomy that few could have imagined. The glamorous public image versus a private reality defined by calculation, ambition, and strategic maneuvering. Imagine the cognitive dissonance for the public. One moment, they see Meghan smiling at charity events, waving to adoring crowds, and speaking eloquently about causes she championed. The next, Doria reveals a life where every gesture, every word, every interaction was meticulously planned to advance personal objectives. The tension between perception and reality is staggering. How can one reconcile the warmth of public appearances with the cold precision of private strategy? And more importantly, what does this dichotomy say about the very nature of influence and ambition? Doria's account began with the most visible aspects of Meghan's public persona. She described the polished charm that the world had come to admire, a persona carefully cultivated to evoke admiration, trust, and emotional connection. From interviews to award ceremonies, from philanthropic events to royal engagements, every appearance was orchestrated to reinforce an image of authenticity, warmth, and relatability. Fans praised her accessibility, journalists admired her eloquence, and social media celebrated her every move. Yet, beneath this seamless exterior, a different story was unfolding, one known only to those closest to her, including her mother. According to Doria, Meghan's private reality was defined by meticulous calculation. Decisions that appeared spontaneous, attending a gala, offering a public statement, or participating in a charitable campaign, were in fact part of a larger blueprint. Every action was evaluated for potential impact on public perception, influence, and long-term objectives. Relationships were not only navigated socially but strategically, aligning personal interactions with broader goals. Even gestures of apparent generosity or compassion were measured against their ability to enhance visibility or credibility. This contrast between public image and private reality created a paradoxical tension. On the one hand, Meghan's charm, eloquence, and charisma inspired admiration and loyalty. On the other, the exposure of calculated strategy challenged assumptions of authenticity and questioned the motives behind her actions. The audience was confronted with a dilemma. Could one truly admire a life that was both genuine in appearance yet orchestrated in execution? And could Meghan herself reconcile the human need for authenticity with a life so carefully controlled? Doria's revelations extended beyond professional calculations into the personal sphere. Friendships, romantic relationships, and family interactions were described as being carefully navigated with strategic intent. Decisions about whom to trust, when to engage, and how to present oneself were all informed by an acute awareness of potential outcomes. Even seemingly trivial moments were evaluated for long-term consequences, reflecting a life conducted with the precision of a strategist rather than the spontaneity of ordinary human experience. The implications of this private reality were profound. While Meghan appeared to be at ease publicly, she faced constant internal calculations, weighing the benefits and risks of every interaction. Emotional authenticity was tempered by strategic consideration, spontaneity was moderated by foresight, and personal relationships were subtly influenced by underlying objectives. It was a delicate balancing act, one that required constant vigilance and self-control. Doria's account suggested that this level of scrutiny and calculation was both a strength and a source of vulnerability, creating tension that few could perceive from the outside. For the public, the the revelations forced a re-evaluation of Meghan's achievements. Her charisma and success were undeniable, but the lens of calculation introduced nuance and complexity. It became apparent that what many had interpreted as natural charm or genuine empathy was, at times, aligned with strategic objectives. This reframing challenged assumptions about authenticity, revealing that influence is often constructed as much through intentional design as through innate personality traits. Doria also highlighted contradictions that added depth to the narrative. Meghan's public image projected openness, inclusivity, and warmth, while her private reality involved careful selection, negotiation, and manipulation of interactions. The contrast between what she presented and what she enacted privately created an intricate tension, one that was both fascinating and unsettling. For those who had admired her, it was a moment of recalibration, forcing them to consider the complexity behind public personas. The story grew even more compelling when considering the consequences of this dichotomy. A carefully curated public image can garner admiration, trust, and loyalty. But when the private reality is exposed, it introduces risk, vulnerability, and scrutiny. Doria's revelations acted as a mirror, reflecting both the brilliance and the fragility inherent in Meghan's approach. The public was invited to see not just her calculated moves, but also the emotional, relational, and reputational costs of a life so meticulously constructed. One of the most striking aspects of this exposure was the emotional weight it carried. Doria did not simply catalog actions or achievements. She described the impact of calculated living on relationships, trust, and personal well-being. Friendships strained under the pressure of strategic interactions, familial bonds were tested by calculated behavior, and the internal stress of maintaining a public image that was at odds with private reality created a persistent tension. The revelations humanized Meghan while simultaneously complicating the narrative of her rise. Audience engagement intensified as Doria continued to draw contrasts. She shared anecdotes where Meghan's charm had won over influential figures, only for the underlying motives to be revealed later. Instances that appeared spontaneous were often the result of careful planning, and opportunities that seemed serendipitous were in fact premeditated. Each example invited